Go ahead.
Hello, everybody. I am very, very excited to be with Carolyn this morning because of the absolute madness that erupted last week when the Capitol was stormed by a group of rioters who were clearly directed by the president. This is a massive shift in our experience, and Carolyn and I, we have to say, predicted it, because when we wrote Savage Grace, we plunged separately and together into a study of the roots of fascism, because we understood viscerally that Trump was a proto-fascist figure and that many of the forces that were supporting Trump were inherently fascist, and that if he would get power, as of course he did, then these forces would be operative in precisely the way they have been and in precisely the way that they erupted last Wednesday.
And
We had known this was
I think it's important, Andrew, to say this is in Savage Grace, which we wrote right before the inauguration in 2017.
exactly. We knew, we laid it out, and we were criticized for it. We were told that we were doom merchants and that we were overanalyzing and that Trump would be contained and that there would be so much goodwill that everybody would sing kumbaya and it would all be okay. It was never going to be okay. So, Carolyn, how is this huge event affecting you?
Well, it's affecting me deeply. And, news is breaking so frequently that I keep my ear to the ground in terms of the news every day. I know that today the impeachment is coming before the House. Um, and the House is going to vote for impeachment, and then it'll go to McConnell, and he'll sit on it for several days, and then it will not happen. We know that it's a done deal. And this will be only another badge of honor for Trump. Wow, I've got two impeachments now. But what concerns me, and I'm deeply worried, is that on the 17th, which is next Sunday, all of the right wing media, the parlors and so on, are advertising a million militia march on Washington. That's 3 days before the inauguration. And then they're also planning to come back stronger at the inauguration. Now, there are going to be hundreds of thousands of police in the area on inauguration day. But this does not mean that there won't be violence at the state capitals. And state capitals are not as prepared with National Guard and with other kinds of resources to defend themselves. So none of this is going away anytime soon.
Well, not only is it not going away, but we're going to, I am sure, face all kinds of terrifying revelations about what actually happened. The first thing that's going to be shown us is that it could have been very much worse.
Oh, yes.
They could have killed the senators and members of Congress, and they could have murdered the vice president and the speaker.
And
We
take
know
people
that's
hostage.
possible now. Exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing that we're going to find out is that it is an inside job. We both know that. The fact that the police weren't there in full force, the fact that the FBI notified the Washington lot, but that they didn't act on it, the fact that they didn't have the authority to act on it because it hadn't come from guess where, all of this points to something absolutely nefarious, which is not just that it was a riot incited by the president, but that the whole thing had been planned for months.
Yes.
And a great many of the Republicans who are now jumping ship were part of that organization. That is a terrible thing for America to face, because it means facing what you and I and many commentators have been saying, which is that the Republican Party has become potentially a party that could give birth to authoritarian fascism.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the Republican congresswomen, brand new from Colorado, which is an enormous embarrassment to me, was texting the mob as to where Pelosi's office was. And
Right.
the fact that they were able to find places in the Capitol that nobody knows about, but they went right there to those places is terrifying.
It's not only terrifying, it really does alert us to the work ahead.
Yes.
And I think that if we are looking at this immense crisis in the way that we're recommending people look at crises in radical regeneration, if we're looking at it with the wisdom of the serpent and the innocence of the dove, both perspectives trained on it from a place of calm and equilibrium, I think we can really see that we now have to do three things. What has to be put in place is a rigorous and inexorable system of accountability. Everyone who abetted these lies about the election needs to be held account for what happened on Wednesday and what could now unfold. The second thing that has to be done is that we have to address the tension between free speech and hate speech. And we have to address the tyranny of the big tech companies that get fabulously rich by cynically stoking and ferrying messages of hate and lies. That has to be addressed, and we have to find the way, which is going to be difficult, to legislate against hate speech, set up all kinds of regulatory processes by which these terrifying lies, which have got so much traction because of social media, can never get that traction again. And the third thing that we have to accept is that this insurrectionist, riotous movement is a domestic terrorist movement.
Yes.
It is much bigger than the great majority of people ever imagined. It's not just a few rotten apples. The police clearly were in it partly. The militia were in it on the crazy side, but also the military was in on it. And the whole chain of command that should have ensured that the capital was protected was deliberately interfered with in a way that would have ensured a coup had things gone in any way differently.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
in your article, that brilliant article you wrote, I think 10 days ago, you had a very stern passage on precisely this. Do you have it available? Can you
I
read?
don't have it available right at the moment, but go
But you
ahead and
know what I'm
paraphrase,
speaking.
please.
Well, no, what you were saying is that unless we can root out this cancer of lies and the tyranny of the big tech companies, and unless we can truly see that Trump and his cronies are held accountable on every level and the legal penalties for continuing in their folly are made absolutely clear, we're going to have on our hands a massive subterranean, increasingly well organized domestic terrorist force.
And what I'd like to say about that is we really need to get that.
We have to get that.
In this country, it's very difficult for us to get that we could have a long-term insurgency movement, which is equivalent to jihadist movements in Middle Eastern countries that have gone on for years and years and years. There's not going to be a quick solution to this. And, I want to emphasize to well-meaning people who are saying, well, we have to heal, we have to heal, we have to reconcile, truth and reconciliation. Those are all wonderful ideas. And as Andrew and I were talking about yesterday, we must have justice first. There
But
must be accountability.
this is why the perspective that we're offering in Radical Generation as a way of looking at these incredible crises is so important. It's very clear that the wisdom of the serpent is saying to us, are you kidding me? What more do you need to see just how dangerous all of these white supremacist movements are? They are fascist, inherent in their nature. The racism in this country is proto-fascist. And when you get a crazy leader of great manipulative skills, such as Trump in power, you feed those terrible shadows and they come together to birth a monster, the monster of an insurrectionist movement. It's time that America absolutely loses its last golden Pollyanna locks about himself. I'm sick to death of people on the TV saying, this is not America.
Oh.
It is America. America is also amazing, brilliant people who have empathy, who truly want a unified culture and want the end of racism and are struggling against huge odds to do that. That's true. That is here. But what is also here in almost comparable power is this lie-fed madness, which is breeding potentially the end of our democracy and the end of the democratic experiment on earth. Because if American democracy goes, then democracy all over the world will fall like sick dominoes.
And I would like to add that, you know, what I've been writing about in the last couple of articles is, you know, those folks on the left who are saying, well, you know, there's absolutely no difference between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. They're all the same. They're all corrupt. And what we need is a progressive who will come in and just, you know, from the ground up, just change everything. And what I keep insisting is that is not going to happen. And there is an enormous difference between the Republican and Democratic Party. If this doesn't demonstrate it, I don't know what does. And we need to stop hoping for a progressive savior who's going to come in and change all of the mistakes that we've made in the last 400 years and make everything all just and fair. We have to start from where we are right now. And the most important thing is that we get Trump out of office and that we come down hard on these people who are trying to create an ongoing insurgency. And hopefully the Republican Party as it is now will go somewhere and die. And I don't know what they're going to be able to rebuild from that. At the moment, I don't care. I'm just concerned with the saving lives and preventing more violence and with accountability for what has happened.
Well, I hear you, but I'd like to bring in the perspective of the innocence of the dove, because I do see immense opportunities in this. I agree wholeheartedly with you when you say first justice, then reconciliation, first accountability, then healing, because the accountability is part of the healing.
Yes.
We have to have all of the facts. We have to have the facts of Trump's extrovert and introvert absorption in all of this, the inner and outer ways in which he's been fomenting this. All of that has to be laid bare. We have to be absolutely clear about the role of the police and the military in it and sort out those who are supporters of this insurrection movement while pretending to protect the law. We have to denounce that, especially because it's part of the Republican Party that claims to be the party of law and order. And in fact, that part of the Republican Party has supported sedition. That's clear. We have to get clear, too, about the ways in which the big tech companies have fomented this and how we have let this cancer grow in ways that are profoundly naive and responsible. We have to get clear through a massive bipartisan commission on all of these details, because it's only when we have the facts adamantinely clear that we'll be able to see just how dangerous the situation is and start moving in clear, rigorous legal ways to wipe this cancer out and to start the process of deep education, deep dialogue, and in the end, profound forgiveness that will enable this culture, if it has a chance, to come together. And I think it does have a chance, because I think what happened on Wednesday was so profoundly shocking to moderate Republicans. And I would say I do care about the Republican Party, not that I in any way support what they've been doing for the last 4 years, but because I know, and you know, that a real radically intelligent conservative party is essential for the progress of democracy. There have to be two sides that are prepared to argue legally and within the constitution, so that whatever policies are born can have as rich and ample a scope as possible. That's the ideal on which democracy is based. So I see, not only do the Democrats, with the power they now have the opportunity to put their deepest principles into practice through this crisis, and this crisis is offering them that opportunity, and they'll have to take it in the most hard-headed and generous way. It also is offering the Republicans the chance to turn back from the precipice and say, we have been crazy. We've been deluded by this hallucination of Trumpism and by the power that it offered us. This is not what our deep principles are. We're going to go back to those principles and make them the foundation of an authentic conservatism. That's also possible if there are the statesmen and stateswomen in the Republican Party willing to come together to do something that grueling. I'm not sure that they will. I'm not sure that they can, but it's possible. And the third thing
Go ahead.
that this makes obvious is that every single American, and everybody who loves America as I do — I'm not a citizen, I live here, I'm a permanent resident, but I care immensely about America and the future of America — everyone has got to understand that they have got to be massively less naive, massively more clued up, and massively more responsible as citizens.
Yes.
To really get acquainted by what's happening without illusion, without the kind of genius for smearing makeup over the wound that America is so famous for, without its unbelievable Pollyanna genius for denial. All of that has got to go, because what happened on Wednesday has to be the end of that insurrectionist movement, not the potential beginning of something that could in the end split this country apart or birth the dark monster of authoritarianism far more completely than this psychotic lunatic has managed to do. Imagine if we don't hold people accountable, if this rigorous structure isn't put in, somebody who's much, much more grounded in a ghastly way than Trump, and much more patiently, lethally ruthless than Trump is. Imagine what damage they could do, riding on all of the resentment and rancor that has fed this movement, fed itself by horrifying lies.
There are a number of Republican Congress people, senators, who are far more intelligent than Trump, who are dangerous and lethal because they are fascists at heart. Many of them wrapped in the Christian flag, so they're
Oh God.
Christo-fascist. One of those who comes to mind is Tom Cotton, senator from Arkansas. His designs are absolutely fascist. And people like that have a good chance of winning if the Democrats are worn down, if this movement is strengthened, and I find that really frightening. But you're absolutely right. The whole reason that Trump was elected is that people had no understanding of fascism. And we tried
Right.
to educate folks in Savage Grace to explain what it was and what it is. People have got to start learning you know, what it is and what it's all about, and the many cloaks that it can come in to disguise itself.
Exactly. Well, because the great brilliance of the Republicans, if you can call it that, is that they diverted the attention of a great many people onto socialism when
Exactly.
the real danger is fascism.
Right. And
Antifa is in its own way as crazy as this lot. I am not pro Antifa. I believe in the fundamental understanding of Antifa, which is that it recognizes that fascism can be born here, but it's employing fascist means itself to protest fascism. And that is a complete moral, spiritual, political dead end. So going forward, we need Biden to be absolutely open to these two kinds of wisdom, the vision of the innocence of the dove and the wisdom of the serpent. And the wisdom of the serpent will say to him, you have to denounce the extremity of left violence, just as you are now addressing the extremity of proto-fascist right-wing violence. Both have to be denounced and laws have to be put in place. And if you seem to do that, as well as attack what happened on Wednesday, then your moral authority and spiritual and political authority will be deeply enhanced.
yes, absolutely. And, you know, as we finish up here today, one of the things I would like to do as we bring this to a close, and you know, I'm not saying we should stop talking, but
Right.
I want to acknowledge, before we go any further, one Capitol policeman named
Yes.
Eugene Goodman, an African-American man.
Yes.
And as I was watching him, as all of this was happening Wednesday, the crowd was coming at him and he was backing up and backing up. I noticed that he was armed. I noticed that he had a baton. And, you know, I thought, well, why doesn't he shoot? And then I thought, well, they're probably armed too. They would shoot back at him. He'd be a dead man. So, you know, he had no choice but to keep backing up. But he was very shrewd in his backing up because he was backing the
And leading them away from the Senate, which was,
leading them away from the Senate gallery.
he's a
That's why
hero,
he
yes.
was where he was backing up. So
Right.
he's really a hero, and I want to just acknowledge him.
Well, I want to acknowledge too the policemen who did help
Right.
and did show extraordinary bravery and dedication, and how that's what makes this situation so complicated, and that's what demands the kind of patient hunger for facts that we're talking about. That's what demands every single American to take their responsibilities of citizenship with a much more exalted and rugged
Yes.
commitment.
Absolutely.
That is the way in which this tragedy could prevent the birth of this monstrous possibility and, in fact, enable America to be a much more mature, much more level-headed, much more compassionate, but also much more wary democracy. Because now the adolescent that is America has faced that adolescent let free can destroy everything. It is a moment of mature spiritual reckoning. And as teachers, we must do everything we can to help that birth. It's a very strange moment when you will find me saying that the best speech given so far about the crisis was given, of all people, God bless him, by Arnold Schwarzenegger. It is simply an astounding, pitch perfect
Yes.
speech
Yeah.
because he goes straight for the jugular. He calls Trump a failed leader, the worst president ever. He calls out the Republicans. He alerts the country to the danger. And then he ends with this tremendous image. He picks up Conan's sword. I don't know if you've seen this.
Yes, I've seen it.
And he said, look, I'm not trying to make you all swordsmen, but I tell you something about steel. How you get a great sword is that you temper it again and again. You plunge it into the fire to heat it up, then you plunge it into boiling water, and you do this again and again and again. And that's how you temper a democracy too. This Tragedy could be one of the ways in which American democracy really claims its ideals and really legislatively and intellectually and spiritually deals or begins to with the monstrous shadows that Trump has incarnated and let rip and deliberately fed for his own horrifying purposes. That is the hope that I am going to build my heart on and work to realize, because now we know that everything we said in Savage Grace and everything we repeated at another level of intensity in Radical Regeneration is not the lucubrations of two wild old birds like you and me. It is an accurate picture of a society that is in tremendous danger of dissolution, but has also been given a divine opportunity through this tragedy to clean its stables and get to far more serious work to embrace the whole populace and start the business of justice and then reconciliation and healing.
I would like to, I think we really should draw this to a close, and I'd like to get your feedback on this, but I'm very concerned with the next few days, and I would like to encourage people, because there is going to be this mass action on Sunday, and then the inauguration 3 days later, 2 days later. I'd like to encourage people to call their congressman and say, you know, we want to make sure that there are plenty of troops in Washington. Do whatever you can to create accountability on what happened on Wednesday. And I would invite people to call their state senator and their state representatives and make sure that your state capital, ask them to make sure the state capitals are secure, because state capitals are in jeopardy. On Wednesday, there were demonstrations or protests and terrorist actions at state capitals as well as the national capital.
And they're hopelessly vulnerable, aren't they? They have a few
They
old
don't
guys
have
there.
the resources.
Right.
They don't have the troops.
No.
And then just on your own accord, after you take that action, to really take care of yourself, to be vigilant, to pay attention to what's going on in the news, and to really make this a time of deep meditation and contemplation, where we are focusing on being better citizens and working for accountability and peace and love wherever we can.
I hear you, and I agree with absolutely everything you say. And I'd just like to add one thing. I think this is the time for all lovers of God in America to dedicate 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes at night
Yes.
for fervent prayer to protect our democracy. All I was doing on Wednesday, and I watched the TV for the whole day because I knew, my God, this is absolutely the most essential thing to try to understand, was praying. I think, pray, please, God, give America the wisdom, the clarity, the stability, the deep sorrow, the deep capacity to examine the shadow that will enable America to preserve its democracy. It is so sacred and so important. Don't underestimate the power of prayer. So I'm begging all of you to dedicate 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes at night to really concentrate in your heart on all the blessings that this very flawed democracy has given you. Concentrate on the noble dream of the Constitution. Concentrate on your own deepest longings for equality and justice and empathy to all, and embrace of all minorities, all the deepest dreams of your heart for a just society, and really beg the beloved to surround the Capitol and the inauguration with a cordon of invisible light, because it's a very fragile moment. The birth of something amazing could happen, the birth of something terrible could happen. Pray for the grace that it is the amazing that takes place, and do everything in your power as a citizen to cause good trouble, to make damn sure that it does.
And with that, Andrew, I suggest that we conclude for today, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks with comment on whatever has happened between now and then, right?
Right. And God bless America.